We now have the problem of evil or the argument from evil in the appropriate context in the philosophy of religion. That is, it's one of the major arguments that's considered in for among the arguments for and against God's existence. In particular, it's an atheological argument, one that's against God's existence. Let's turn for a minute to thinking about the root, the basis of the entire problem, and that it revolves around the question, is there evil in the world? Now, oftentimes, when confronted with the argument, all of a sudden people start to rethink their view on whether or not there is actually evil in the world. But it's easy enough. Ask somebody who has been, a veteran of a war. Ask somebody who's a veteran of war, is there evil in the world? And you'll get a very strong affirmative. But when we think about evils in the world, there are a whole set of evils that we might think of as moral evils. And after I list these, I'll explain to you the distinction. The idea, when we're thinking about moral evils, one example, late 1930s, early 1940s, the Holocaust, the Nazis killing 6 million Jews, total of 15 million people, exterminating them in concentration camps, in death camps. Now that was a pretty evil thing, or most people certainly consider it. There are obviously people who deny that things like this ever occurred. I think it's pretty clear that they have, and I think it's pretty clear that this is a pretty bad thing that's happened. Another evil, go back, about 100 years before that, or a little bit less, slavery in the United States, or slavery anywhere. Not a good thing. So there actually was evil in the world. I mean, there are some people who try to argue, and I'm not putting any weight into this, that slavery helped certain people out, didn't help certain people out. I don't think that we should really take any of these kinds of discussions seriously when we're considering whether slavery was an evil. It certainly was. If we go back just, a year or so, a couple of years, the Darfur genocide. It was a case where there was basically a religious war going on in Darfur, and there were people running around killing people based on their religion. That is, people who were not Muslims were being slaughtered by marauding bands of Muslim fighters. Terrible situation. It was a genocide that was occurring. Now, on the less grand scale, but nonetheless evils, there are things like child prostitution. I was kind of pretty careful not to just say prostitution, because we could end up getting into a debate whether that's bad, good. But certainly child prostitution is not a good thing. It's an evil in the world. We could talk about murder, rape. I find in my classes sometimes that rape is the one of this whole list of evils, both when I'm talking about the problem of evil and when I'm talking about ethics. Rape is one thing today, for some reason, that people all agree is an evil. And I think for good reason they agree that it's an evil. And let's think of a few of these other evils that I'm just going to call natural evils. Several years back, there was an earthquake, terrible earthquake in Haiti. A lot of people were killed. Children left parentless, homeless. There was a couple of years ago a tsunami in Japan. There was a nuclear meltdown in one plant as a result of that. Horrendous situation in Japan. Really, really bad. And just recently, in fact, just in the last few weeks, we've seen some very, very, very serious tornadoes, some weather. So there are things that are pretty clearly evil, or at least most reasonable people would agree that there is evil in the world. And that's kind of a basic assumption that the argument of evil begins with. That is, it's almost its point of departure.